Hey everyone, welcome back. Coach Leah, MoneyWise Mom. I help busy adults take control of their finances because let's face it, the struggle is real, and I want to help you live a more purposeful, generous life by taking control of your finances. Today, we're actually talking about faith in our finances. And what made me think about this is part of the story that I tell, my testimony, my path to financial freedom started with bringing God into my finances, inviting God into my finances is what I say a lot. And then I started thinking, it sounds great, but what does that really mean when I say I invited God into my finances and that changed everything? And if you guys want to see a little more about that story, my website on my About page has more detail, moneywisemom.com. Just check out the About page. But what I mean by that is when I decided to do something different because what I was doing before wasn't working, I decided to trust God with my finances, meaning what was most important to me was to be able to give God back what he asked for. He said, bring your tithe into the storehouse and I will bust open the gates of heaven and pour out a blessing that you can't even contain. And it wasn't for selfish reasons that I did that. It was because I realized why God was saying that. That God was saying, if you will help me build my church, I will give you more blessing than you can handle. And what that means is, could I afford to let go of and live on less than I make? And to me, that was living on 90% of my income so I could give back to my local church the other 10%. I do other things that are generous with it, but when I say inviting God into my finances, that was a really hard step for me at that time. But as I kept giving with a joyful heart, out of gladness, not out of obligation, my church wasn't making me feel guilty. It was just a change that was happening in my heart that God kept nudging me, saying, would you trust me? Do you trust me enough to believe what I've put in the Bible about your finances? That I will take care of you and I will keep the devourer from destroying you. There's words around that in Malachi 3:10. So go read it. But the topic for today is, that's the background, that's the context of what do I even mean? But the question for you is, are you making God your CFO? Is God on your board of directors? Are you talking to God as your first meeting in the morning saying, God, will you guide me with my finances? Will you put it on my heart what you would like me to do with my finances? Will you show me the steps, order my footsteps? That's another way that you can invite God into your finances, is through prayer and just asking God to put it on your heart. And what that feels like is you're just going to get, it's not always an audible voice. I've never had an audible voice, but the thought has been so strong, it almost feels audible, where you're like, I can't shake this thought. And the more you think about it, the stronger the feeling gets is, yes, that feels right. That's what I'm feeling led to do. And I'm just going to be real. When I first came back to church, there was a period of time where I wasn't going to church for a while, and I ended up coming back to church in my adult years. And over time, I realized the good that my church was doing in my life, and I wanted to be part of continuing to help make that happen. But it wasn't a switch that just flipped instantly. I knew that it was important for God that my heart was in the right place, that I was doing it for the right reasons, not to check off a box, not because anybody was judging me, not because anybody cared. It was a heart posture, a heart decision between me and God. And so I said, you know what I'll do? First, I'm going to give what I can with a joyful heart. So I made a promise to God, if you will. It's like, okay, when I come to church, if I've got money in my wallet, I'll give it to you. And then some weeks I opened my wallet and I was like, oh, I forgot I had that in there. And there was more cash in there than felt comfortable to let go. So over time, I was just like, you know what? Okay, I said I would do it. Here you go. And then over time, it just kept nudging me like, okay, I knew that I was doing that. But then one day I decided to do the math. I'm like, well, what would 10% actually be? And it was a much bigger number than I had ever consistently committed to giving. So it was at first uncomfortable. But when I compared that to what I was doing kind of haphazardly, if you will, with, okay, if I have money left over, not intentionally, but if it just ends up that I didn't spend the cash in my wallet, I'll give that to tithing or to the church, because 10% is tithe. Any other giving is not a tithe unless it's 10%. It's just a terminology that means what it means. I realized I was not even coming close to that number. And so that's when God started knocking my heart. And I said, I actually can't afford this in this moment because my expenses had taken every bit of my paycheck. Expenses that I couldn't just turn the switch off for. Bills that I had, I piecemealed my paycheck out, and my debts owned me. I really was a slave to my debts. And that's when I got angry at myself in a way, like righteous anger. Like, I can't believe I did this to myself voluntarily. And not all of my purchases were needs. There were some wants in there that I just chose to put on a credit card and deal with the monthly payments. And so when my heart changed and I really wanted to align my finances with what was more important to me, what God was doing in my heart and in my life, I was actually just as frustrated that I couldn't when I wanted to. And that was when I started my journey. September 2018, very specifically. I wrote it in the book, the Dave Ramsey book I was reading at the time. I put it in pencil because I was like, I don't know if I can fully trust God with this, but here you go, God. It was like a promise that I was asking him to keep in pencil. And he did. I never looked back. And this isn't saying that God's a genie. I just really want to bring into this whole financial picture that it's much more than your finances. Taking control of your finances is not the finish line in and of itself. This is the starting point. This is what starts to put options back on the table to live a more purposeful life. Aligning your finances with what matters most. Trusting God with your finances. You will start to see turnaround happen. And God says, test me in this. He doesn't say test me anywhere else. He says, don't test the Lord, except he does say, test me in this. If you would dare to trust God with your finances, watch and see what happens. It doesn't mean that saying no or cutting some things out of your life that were comforts or creature comforts or conveniences, nice to haves. I said not right now to some things because it was more important for me to be able to put that as a line item in the top of my budget list. And I did. I planned my whole budget around tithing. So I basically took a 10% pay cut of what I used to live on because I had enough that it didn't hurt me. I just was like, at the end of every month, I'm spending what I have. I wasn't intentional about how I was prioritizing my spending. And that was the first thing I ever did in my whole life, to be intentional with my money. And it gave me a little bit of a knot in my stomach because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this. And I automated it to help hold myself accountable. So I couldn't decide every month if I was going to do it. I just automated it. And I was like, okay, I'm letting this thing ride. And I have never turned back. I've never had a need to change that. And again, it's not because I'm treating God like a genie. I'm just wanting to encourage you and inspire you that God holds his promises. We have not been in lack. We have not been without. We have been able to live life. We don't do stupid stuff with our money either. So don't do stupid stuff with your money. And I'm going to say that. I hope it stings a little because if you're used to making stupid decisions with your money, this is your nudge to do something different. And watch what happens. Watch what happens when you start living life intentionally. If you have a purpose on your life, if you're going to work saying, I know there's got to be something better. I know God's put something bigger on my heart. I would love it if I could do this. A lot of times we feel inspired to do something different when it means we can spend more time with our family, with our loved ones. If we can do more of what we're passionate about. God gave you those passions and talents, by the way, if they're godly passions. But the talents, I'm an artist. I was born good at art. You were born good at something. I promise it. Even if your gut instinct is to say you don't have any talents, I'm going to challenge you because you do. You just have to sit with it long enough or ask some people, what do you see me as being good at? What comes to mind when you think of me is something that I do well. Start asking, even though it might feel a little weird at first, but God puts those desires on our heart. He put a purpose on your life. And a lot of times what keeps us from stepping into that and being bold and making those moves, it's not always making a career move like I did. I quit my corporate career to start a financial coaching business because God put that on my heart. I took steps to make that happen. Yours might be just freeing up enough time on the weekends to do more of what you love, to do more of what God's put on your heart. It could be volunteering, freeing up your time and money. You either have more time, less money, and if you can afford to have less money so you have more time in a sense that if you don't have to work all weekend because you have options on the table, that's buying your time back. It's not all about money. It's not about climbing the ladder of financial success just to get to the top and find out that you've abandoned everything that actually means something in life, that you've lost friendships, family relationships, that your family doesn't know you because you're at work all the time. Sit and think about the things that really matter. Fast forward to 65. I'm just using a generic retirement year. I know that's not when everybody retires, but fast forward to the future, to a time when you think you may look back and say, what would I look back on and tell myself, I wish I would have done this? And the craziest thing about this is an inspirational message because I want you to dream a little bit. If you were to look back and think, what if I did this? And you fill in that blank. Would you have more regrets knowing that you played it safe the entire time and never find out? Or would you rather take the risk that you went to go find out and you failed? Even if you failed, think about that. What would that look like even if you failed? Because it's okay to fail at something if you're trying to figure it out. It doesn't mean you're going to fail, but we're often afraid to take bold steps because we're afraid of failure. You think it was easy? It was scary to step away from the only career I had ever known. But because I knew that God had planted this fire inside of me, I couldn't shake it. Couldn't figure out why I wanted to help people with their finances. I was like, God, why do I care if anybody else changes their life? And when I sat with it and kept asking that question, said, God, tell me why you put this on my heart. What I realized is that everybody has a purpose. You have a purpose. And if you're locked up with your finances and feeling like you can't step into that purpose because you're in financial bondage, God showed me in my heart that everybody's walking around with a dream inside them, a dream on their heart, something that they wish they could do if only. And I want to help you unlock that if only. If only I could afford to do that. If only I could take control of my finances. If only I could align my finances with what matters most. And that's what this channel is for. It's to get you excited about what's possible if only you would take a chance and do something different. So I do invite you to continue hanging out with me. If you like this content, please subscribe. I'd love to have you follow me. My website has content on it. I post these videos to my website, moneywisemom.com. You can reach me by email, leah@moneywisemom.com, Leah. And I want to be your coach. I want to coach you not just practically, but with inspiration. So I'm all about practicality. That's my thing. I want to take the things that feel scary and complex and make it easy. Show you that if I can do it, you can do it because you have it in you and you need that little voice. And right now I'm going to be that little voice on your shoulder saying you can do it. So it is not always easy. I will say that. It is not always easy, but it is always worth it when you know your why and you know why you're doing something different. Even if it's hard, do something different. I love you guys. Thanks for being here with me and get out there. Slay the day. Love you. Bye for now.